good Friday morning, a feel-good football Friday, and we're going to get you ready for a humongous sports weekend in New York. The Jets, the Giants, by the way, the 2-1 Giants who could be 3-1 playing the Bears. The 1-2 Jets who could be 2-2 against the Steelers with Zach Wilson making his return. And the two big baseball stories, Aaron Judge getting to 62 potentially over the weekend, and the Mets and Braves for the division. It's going to be a big one. And last night it started in the NFL with the Dolphins and the Bengals, a very good football game. But one story, of course, is going to be bigger than the rest, and that was Tua Tagovailoa going down, looking very, very hurt. The hand seizing up, him getting carted off the field, and then you add the layer of what happened the week before, this being a standalone game. He did come back, got checked out, did come back, will travel with the team, but this is an interesting one, man. There was an investigation last week into the concussion stuff. Now he gets hurt again. This is going to be a huge topic heading into this week of the NFL. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
Hey, good morning, G. Take it from somebody who's had many concussions and probably was the first player ever put in concussion protocol in 1995 as a New York Jet, by the way. The concussion situation in the NFL is serious, and I've said that many times here, that every sideline has a independent neurotrauma specialist.
Yeah.
And they are there only because of that reason, to make sure that if a player is hurt and he is stumbling around on the field, and they actually have people that sit up in the press box with binoculars on, just to make sure that everybody on both teams is safe and that there are no remnants or what looks like to be a concussion, because the players will lie. We all lie. I told you, and I've said this 1,000 times, that we are always our own worst enemy. Now, the interesting thing about what happened last night was that hit did not look that bad to me. I mean, that was not a direct hit to the head.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
That was not something where he was running around the corner like Daniel Jones did last year against the Philadelphia Eagles and put his head down.
Yeah.
It wasn't one of those. He got thrown to the ground, and he might have hit the back of his head again like he did hit this past Sunday. So the interesting thing is they played on Sunday. He got hurt. He was stumbling around. It looked like he had, his legs had given out on him against the Buffalo Bills. They took him in. They took him through all the protocols. After the game, head coach Mike McDaniel said it was not a concussion. It had nothing to do with his head. It had something to do with his back. And there's many reports that obviously you can look back. You just Google it. You'll see all the stories, what Mike McDaniel was saying about Tua after last week's game. Well, not last week's game, after Sunday's game, because here we are 4 days later playing in another game. And one of the interesting things that I took away from last night was Ryan Fitzpatrick was his former teammate, who was one of the pregame and halftime and postgame hosts. He said last night, because he interviewed Tua when they got in, I guess, on Wednesday, he goes, "I've never seen him so happy in all my life." In other words, there were no symptoms, nothing that he saw from talking to him and watching him and listening to him that gave him any indication that he had any sort of concussion or anything from the week before. And I'm assuming that they probably had a conversation of what happened to him a week before. The week before, or Sunday, he went back onto the field. Remember that. He went back onto the field after he got hurt.
Went back and played.
Meaning that he went through whatever the protocol is that you have to go through as a player nowadays. We didn't have to go through this. So I'm not really sure the lengths at which they go to. But whatever protocol he had to go through with an independent neurologist or neurotrauma expert, he went through and then went back on that field. And that independent neurotrauma expert is going to be, I'm sure, talked to. Everybody's going to want to know what he saw, what was going on. I believe it was a man. So they're going to go back to that. And then last night, again, like this hit did not seem. Now, there's a number of ways you can get a concussion. It's not just a direct hit to the head. Sometimes there's a body concussion you can get. You can get hit so hard that your brain is still going to move, even though your head's not, directly hit. He looked like he hit the back of his head again this week like he did last week. And when you see that hand seize up, like you pointed out, and that's something that was funny. I was, not funny, but I was texting with Matt Martin last night, and Matt's a big MMA guy. He goes, "Man, sometimes I only see that in those fights when a guy really takes one to the chin." and they seize up on the mat, and it's really a scary thing. And that, I think, is what really has made everybody worried for Tua and the longevity for him. This is something that 5 days between both injuries.
Doesn't feel right. It
right.
doesn't feel right now.
That's the point.
And you said all the things about the independent and all that stuff happens, and this is why it doesn't feel right, because us as sports fans are conditioned now to look at these concussions, look at these players, and assume that when you see a guy stumbling, that he's not going to go back in the game. And I hear all the back stuff, whatever. I've never seen a guy stumble like he did last week and then go back into a game. Now, he must have passed something, because
he did. He did pass it.
But it just feels like, with all the emphasis on these head injuries, that you can't take a risk. And now you come back on Thursday Night Football. He plays. This happens to him. He goes to the hospital. They have to take his face mask off. They don't even move him putting onto the stretcher. And then he's back with the team and he's on a plane. Like, it just doesn't feel right to me. Like, we've gone so far from when you played, when nobody was caring about that stuff, barely caring about that stuff, barely paying attention, to now, and we're going to allow this to happen.
Well, I mean,
it just doesn't feel right.
And let's face it, over the last, 5 to 10 years, when they started putting this independent neurologist, I think it's probably the last 4 or 5 years, the independent neurologist has been on the sideline and up in the booth, by the way. I would think that very few of these things happen. That's the good news. The good news is it doesn't happen a lot.
Sure.
The other good thing about this is that Tua is healthy. He did fly back with his team last night. Is that it will now reaffirm the emphasis back on these types of injuries. But again, you got to go back to the independent neurologist last week. You got to hear what Tua says. And again, Tua did say that it was his back. Now, I don't know if you've ever hurt your lower back, or if you've ever had a back injury where, like you kind of I can't explain it to you, but if you get bent over backwards, which he did last week in the Bills game, and that's where he hurt his back.
Yeah.
And then later on, you feel like a stinger in your lower back. Now, all of a sudden, I've seen guys actually have back injuries and have a hard time walking. So that's why I kind of took it at face value last Sunday, that that's exactly what happened, because I've seen that.
But the hit to be what it was.
And the hit last week, by the way, was also...
Right, he hit the head the same way. And then for him to have this happen to him and have that reaction with his hands, listen, I know that we're watching this. It's layman's terms. We are not neurologists. We are football fans. You are a football player who is now watching every single game. But this just does not feel like it was handled the right way.
Of course not, because they carried him off the field last night.
I mean, exactly. But, and on top of it, you're going to throw him on a plane. Remember when the whole Ryan Church situation happened with the Mets all those years ago, and he had a concussion? They put him on a plane and ended up screwing him up. And, that was back in, 2009.
I know. We've come a long way from that. And, again,
have we?
I think, yeah, we have, because we haven't seen a lot of this.
Yeah.
We haven't. I mean, this is the first guy that I can remember in the last 10 years that we've seen something like this.
But this is why this is so shocking, because we have come so far. You never see a guy stumbling go back into a game. He went back into the game. He plays on Thursday Night Football. Then he gets stretchered off, and then he's back with the team. That's what makes this whole thing so confusing and so shocking.
I'm as a former player who's been through stuff like this and has seen stuff like this, and has lauded the NFL for being open and trying to understand the concussion issues.
Yeah.
Because my generation, the generation before me, and the generation before them are dealing with all sorts of neurological problems that can only come from, slamming your head into each other, for 17 games and Thursday Night Football on a short week, all that kind of crap that goes into this now.
Sometimes 10, 15 years of playing football.
Exactly. So, I hope something does come out of this where they have a better understanding. But the other aspect of this is the player himself, and what the player himself is saying to the doctors, to the coaches, to the team. And believe you me, the trainers know, and every trainer is basically trained in this regard, and that is to make sure they know the symptoms of what a concussion looks like.
Yeah.
Now, when I took that bad concussion against the Bills, I couldn't go outside, but the bright light. I was throwing up. I had constant headaches. I was not me. I was a totally different person for about 2 weeks. I couldn't drive for like 10 days, I think. So and that was a severe concussion. I took it right underneath the chin, like an MMA fighter would from Bruce Smith. But I just, if he is up and around and he's walking and talking and everybody's asking him,
it's tough.
It's a tough.
It's not like a broken arm, right?
And he's saying that it's my back. That's why it's my legs. I mean, see, the other thing too is, Miami would like to win a game. But the Miami Dolphins, or for that matter, I don't believe any of the other 31 teams would ever put now in this day and age. This going back to my day and age. In this day and age, would put a guy out there.
I know
that would potentially have a serious injury simply because of all the eyeballs, all the opinions, and again, what we all saw last night in a single game on a short week with a guy who got hurt on Sunday.
Yeah, that's why this is so sort of amazing to everybody that's been watching football the last 10 years and where we've come with the head injuries. And you mentioned how a player needs to talk about how he feels to go back into a game, and the player generally wants to play. You add the layer of what Tua has gone through as a pro. He's not the guy. He's a bust. Justin Herbert was the guy you should have picked. Now, all of a sudden, Tua's playing the best pro football he's ever played, bar none, with these great wide receivers. The team is 3-0. They're the talk of the NFL. That's an extra layer of him wanting to go back and play,
There's even one more layer, and that's the injuries that he has sustained since he's been a Miami Dolphin.
Yes.
So that also puts the hidden pressure on the player to try to stay on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And, this goes for every high school kid. This goes for, every college kid and obviously every pro in every sport. But again, I can't wait to hear what Jerry has from Mike McDaniel, because we all love Mike McDaniel. We all think he's great. We think he's refreshing for the league. But now here comes this real adversity. I mean, this is real adversity. And I'm not talking about playing with Teddy Bridgewater. I'm talking about trying to explain publicly as the face of the Miami Dolphins how this all went down. Yeah. And now the fun and games are over with.
Yeah, exactly. And you lose the football game. This happens. All eyes on Mike McDaniel. Now, I did hear some stuff driving in that Mike McDaniel was saying about it. And basically he said when he went out there and looked at Tua, it was not the same guy that he's used to talking to. That's what he said.
That was last night.
Yes, last night. Not the same guy he's used to talking to. And he mentioned many times that he did suffer a concussion last night. Like, he did say that. So he didn't say last game, but he did say that last night he did suffer a concussion. But, yeah, I mean, this is going to be – now, I know that it's Friday, so you got all the games in the slate on Sunday.
Oh, we're going to be talking about this on Sunday.
We tend to forget after the football games are played. But, yes, going into it, today, Saturday, NFL pregame shows, the NFL today, this is going to be a huge topic. Oh. And I can guarantee you right now that after all this went down, if there is a guy who is wobbly at all, even if he passes concussion protocol, that player will not go into a football game the rest of the year.
And the other thing, remember, Roger Goodell was at this game last night.
Yeah.
So there will be a memo sent out to every team, every trainer today, just again emphasizing all the things that they try to emphasize. We have these meetings in the summertime with the NFL, and they go through all the mundane stuff that, whether it be rule changes or what they'd like the TVs to show or the networks to show, how to describe something. There's a million things that we go over, and it's a lot of minutia.
Yeah.
If you've been there for 20 years like I have, I've heard it over and over and over again. But over the last 5 years, 6 years, maybe even a little bit longer than that, they have emphasized to us as broadcasters that this is who this guy is, this is who that guy is on the sideline, because there are people on the sideline that you would not even recognize that are wearing different color hats for different reasons. Some of them are tied to the TV broadcast, but most of them are tied to some sort of medical aspect to the game. And between the NFLPA and the NFL, and then, of course, what we all want the answers as to why he was playing if he was hurt last weekend. What was the injury against the Bills? We need to know what that injury was And what does Tua say it was? What did the doctors down there say it was? And what did the independent neurologists say it was on Sunday? We need to know that first.
Yeah, and there's not anybody out there that watched both those games and how this unfolded that doesn't believe that these are connected. Everybody believes that they're connected.
Right, exactly, which is going to be a problem for the NFL. But I will say this, that hit last night and the way that he responded to the hit, it wasn't that bad of a hit. And it wasn't a cheap shot. It wasn't anything like, and he did hit the back of his head like he did the week before or on Sunday when Milano tackled him or hit him after he threw the ball against the Bills. It was kind of the same kind of snap back. It could be like a whiplash type of thing. It could be, there's a million different ways this could have happened. But the way that his hands seized up is what really is, caught all of our attention. And the fact that they had to bring the board out and put him underneath them and then strap him down. Yeah,
and then take the face mask off, too, is another thing because they left the helmet on because they didn't want to mess with his head at all.
So, and the thing about that was, when I saw that, I wasn't initially thinking concussion. I was thinking that it was something worse.
Yeah.
That it was the neck.
Yeah, spinal cord, something like that.
Now, I don't know if they check your neck. I'm not sure. And if he's not complaining about anything, and he's out there in practice and he's throwing and he's being jovial with his teammates and he's the same personality that he always is, then I don't know how, if you're the Miami Dolphins coaching staff or any of the players or even the training staff, say that he can't play.
Yeah, well, this puts this conversation, which has sort of been on the back burner because the NFL has handled it very well the last couple of years, it puts it right back in the forefront.